The ground type is rigid and strong and can devastate the opposition with powerful earthquakes and shrug off electricity like it's nothing. My personal favorite ground type is Phanpy. It's an adorable rolling elephant. I mean, what's not to like? But I'd love to know what your favorite is down in the comments below. The roster available to us in the Hoenn region has some of my favorites, but some of them are in the same area, in which case I'll only be able to catch one since Hardcore Nuzlocke rules entail that only the first eligible Pokemon can be caught in any area. Any Pokemon that faints is boxed forever. No items can be used in battle, I always play on set mode, and I can't level past the next gym leader's highest level Pokemon before entering the battle. So join me as I attempt to beat a Pokemon Omega Ruby Hardcore Nuzlocke using only ground types. Back in the good ol' Hoenn region. Oh! Yeah, hi again, Tropius. Mom, who is this guy and why is he here? Given our choice of starters, there's only one that turns into a ground type, so we pick the water type Pokemon Mudkip. I name it Rosalina, and that timid nature lowering its attack is not doing it any favors. Now, while Mudkip eventually turns into a ground type, for now it's only a water type, so we have to find our real first encounter, Nincada. I capture it and name it Koopa Troopa, and it does have an attack boosting nature, which I don't think is going to help us out too much against our first challenge versus Roxanne and her rock types. That's right, the only Pokemon we have available to us to use for Roxanne is Nincada, a bug type, versus her rock types. And to get through this fight, we're gonna need a massive amount of luck, which is why I went for Sand Attack right away to start lowering this Geodude's accuracy. On top of the fact that we're at the mercy of good fortune, I did teach Nincada Cut instead of Leech Life, which means we can't use it to gain 1 HP back every single time. And that 1 HP recovery could make a huge difference in the future because as you can see, we get hit by a Rock Tomb here, but the plan is to try and evade as many as possible with these Sand Attacks and then start setting up Hardens. As long as we get to +6, any move barring a crit that Roxanne is going to throw at us will only do 1 HP, in which case recovering 1 HP would essentially be a free turn. Unfortunately, the Geodude does get a crit tackle, which does mean that we have to consume our Oran Berry before continuing to use Harden. It also hits another Rock Tomb, which at this point is depleting our limited and non-recoverable health. I set up to +6 defense with a final Harden as the Geodude misses, and at this point, it's time to just send a barrage of cuts and Fury Swipes in to do as much damage as possible. The process of dodging hits and whittling this Geodude down took so much time, and the whole time I was just thinking about how I have to face a Nose Pass after this as well. Now hold on a minute. Yeah, since I continue to deal 1 literal hit point of damage per turn, there's no way for me to avoid Roxanne healing with her potion, but at least she uses it on her Geodude instead of Nose Pass. Eventually though, I do manage to whittle it down again and take it out, but it leaves me at only 3 HP for Nose Pass. Very fortunately though, I almost leveled up to 15 before the battle, which means I get to level 15 after taking out Geodude, which nets me 2 extra health, which is going to be very useful since we haven't Sand Attacked the Nose Pass when it comes in. It ends up hitting its tackle the first turn when I have no Sand Attacks up, leaving me at 4 HP, but after that, I get a lucky 4 more Sand Attacks up before it hits me with another. This does mean I get all my Sand Attacks up, losing only the health afforded to me by the level up. And unfortunately, the only thing I can do going forward is a Hope and Pray, which isn't helping me that much since right away Nose Pass hits another, which means we can only take 1 more hit. Pair that with the fact that I'm at this point starting to run out of Fury Swipes, which is the only way I can do multiple points of damage per turn, and things are looking pretty dire. I do, however, manage to get a lucky 5 hitter in before Nose Pass hits its final tackle, leaving me at 1 HP. At this point, my heart was beating out of my chest. Any one of these turns could be my last, but the Nose Pass kept missing, leaving it down to the wire. At this point, I was all out of Fury Swipes, so 1 damage with Cut is all I could hope for. Eventually, the Nose Pass even missed the second to last tackle, leaving it at 1 HP. Oh my goodness, I don't think I've had a fight that close or dragged out in my entire life. And that's how I beat Roxanne using only Nincada. Wait, that wasn't the whole video idea?
Has anyone ever told you have the looks of a rich boy?
Dude, what would even compel you to say that?
Just as I thought, that's the look.
Yeah, fuck. Now that's a rich boy. Once I get to Granite Cave, I can find my next encounter, a Geodude, which is only a 5% encounter, so I can't believe I'm saying this, but Geodude is a rare Pokemon. I name it Thwomp, and that minus attack nature and not having sturdy is not good at all. I then start facing the gym trainers in hopes of getting to the level cap, and Rosalina gets to level 16, evolving into Marshtomp. Our next opponent is Brawly, who's really more of a gym owner than a gym leader, if you ask me. But nevertheless, with our new and improved team, we have to take him on. on, and I go ahead and lead with my Marshtomp as he sends in his Machop. And this thing really doesn't pose a threat to our Marshtomp whatsoever, so a couple of Water Guns is enough to take it out, and then we have to deal with Makuhita. And this thing actually does manage to knock off our Oranberry, blocking us from recovery in this fight, but a few more Water Guns, and we've got the Gym Badge. Looks like my Water Guns were more powerful than your guns, Brawly. Okay, now that is a rich boy. Wanna know the trick to battling? If you ask me, it's raising different kinds of Pokemon in a balanced way. Oh yeah, dude, I would know. I've got ground types, and ground types. Yeah. We are then involuntarily introduced to Maxie. My heart is pounding in my chest. He's a very literal guy, and I decide to do a bit of super training because the May fight that's coming up is very difficult with her Grovyle having Mega Drain that can pretty much completely destroy our entire team. In fact, I decide to super train Ninkata's special defense all the way up to max because it's probably going to have to carry this entire fight on its back. However, May starts out the fight with her Slugma, so I lead with Marshtomp and take it out with a couple of Water Guns. This of course means that she's going to send in her big bad Grovyle, and expecting a Mega Drain, I swap out into Koopa Troopa, who actually just takes a quick attack. I then get hit by a Fury Cutter and go for a move you can buy in the Slateport Market, Struggle Bug, which actually takes out about a third of its health and lowers the special attack so that Mega Drain does a bit less damage. An Oranberry heals me back up above half as I go for another Struggle Bug, taking it down to about half but lowering its special attack once again so that Mega Drain does even less. I go for yet another Struggle Bug, almost taking it down into the red, as Grovyle then just goes for Pursuit, leaving me at 8 HP, at which point I can take it out with a final Struggle Bug. This just means we need to swap in Rosa to take care of the Wailmer, but once again we have a fight carried by Ninkata, who I didn't think would be this useful in the run. This also sets us up for our next gym fight versus Watson, which can usually be one of the most difficult gym fights in all of Pokemon because of how early and difficult it usually is. However, since he can't use his signature electric type moves since our entire team is comprised of ground types, we easily take out the Magnemite with a combo of Power Punch and Bulldoze. However, even though Watson can't hit us with his electric type moves, he does have annoying moves like Supersonic, but I figure I'll just try to work through it, and I do manage to hit a Bulldoze, taking out the Magneton. And since we're basically at zero risk, I once again go for another Bulldoze, taking out the Voltorb, claiming us the third Gym Badge. As I then break the rocks blocking the path, I find myself a Soft Sand, which is going to power up our ground type moves. I'm then also able to find my next encounter of the run, a Numel, which I capture and name Wiggler. I can't believe I'm saying this, but it having a neutral nature is the first thing that isn't bad. Making my way over to Fall Arbor Town, I can also find another encounter, a Sandshrew that I catch and name Bowser. And like, of course it would have a modest nature, why wouldn't it? And immediately upon leveling up one time, it turns into a Sandslash. Would you like to hear my story? Nope. Oh, you've deflated me. Up the mountain we go, and on the way, Geodude evolves into a Graveler, which means it's time to face our next hot mess of an opponent, Flannery and her fire types. And much like May, Flannery goes ahead and leads with her Slugma, so I send in Rosa and go for a power-up punch right away to increase my attack. Slugma then sets up the sun so that fire-type moves will do more damage. I hit a power-up punch to boost my attack even further, and it goes for an overheat that does about a third of my health. Since I've gotten it down pretty low at this point, Flannery heals up the Slugma, and I go for another power-up punch, which actually gets the burn off of Flame Body, but I heal it up with a Rostberry, at which point I know it's time to start taking it out with Bulldoze. Next is Numel, but since I'm at +3 attack, one Bulldoze is all it takes to take it out, which leaves only Torkoal. And Torkoal's pretty bulky, so one Bulldoze does a bit over half as it sets up the sun once again, which lets me outspeed and take it out for the 4th Gym Badge. Once we've defeated Flannery, we get access to the desert, where we can find one of two encounters, either Baltoy or a Trapinch, and I end up getting a Trapinch, which is exactly what I would have wanted. I nickname it Gobblegut, and at least plus defense minus special attack isn't bad. And now that we've acquired our new team member, it's time to take on our father Norman and his normal types. Now, Norman can be incredibly dangerous because Slacking has some legendary level stats, and it hits me with a feint attack that only does about a fifth of my health, as I can hit it with a power-up punch to boost my attack. The one saving grace here is that Truant makes it immobilized every other turn, so we get a free +2. It then gets a crit with a feint attack as we get another crit on a power-up punch, taking it out. Next up is Vigoroth, which can't do nearly as much damage as Slacking, but it does get to move every single turn, and I take it down into the red with a power-up punch, which means that Norman heals it up. However, because of the extra attack boost from the previous power-up punch, another one isn't enough to take out the Vigoroth, leaving him with his final Slacking. And it does manage to take me down to about 3 HP as I take it down to about half, but since I know it's gonna Truant, I can just take it out with another power-up punch, which means I beat my dad by spamming just one move. Get good, scrub. Beating our father gives us access to surf, which means I can go grab the good rod. And this started the enormously tedious process of trying to fish up a barboach, which is a 5% chance, mind you, but it took way more tries than that for me. Heck, I even managed to find a shiny Magikarp in the process, so you're telling me I can get a 1 in 4,096 odds chance, but not 1 in 20. Finally, after what must have been about 100 attempts, I did find my precious barboach, and I name it Cheep Cheep. I'm a bit insulted by its bad nature, but at least it gets to join the team. However, unfortunately for Magikarp, it's about to spend the rest of time in the box. And speaking of boxes, today's video is brought to you by Boxu, a monthly Japanese snack box subscription that's got new authentic Japanese snacks at your doorstep every single month. And if you're anything like me, being a huge Nintendo fan since early childhood, much like myself, you're probably very curious about Japan. Ever since I was a kid, it's been a dream destination of mine that I eventually have to see to its full extent. But since it's been especially difficult to travel in the past couple years, I'm very grateful to Boxu that they're sending me a bit of Japan for me to experience all the way to Scandinavia. I'm personally a huge mochi fan, so I'm really excited to try this one. There's a description for every single snack in the box, and there's even a map showing where all the snacks are from. It looks like I even got a snack from Kyushu, which is the region in Japan that the Hoenn region is based off of. During the month of March, Boxu celebrates the blooming of the sakura blossoms across Japan in their most anticipated collection of the year, and anyone who subscribes during March will receive the sakura season as their first box. So if you want to start snacking and support me in this channel, you can use the code AntlerBoyLive10 and the link down in the description below to save 10% and up to $47 on your authentic Japanese subscription to Boxu. Let's get back to the video. My first order of business is to evolve Barboach into Whiscash. I then join Steven on some of his rich boy shenanigans.
How about it? Will you get away from me?
Steven, who is this chick?
You target lock completed. You forever.
I don't know, mate. She's a weird one.
Welcome to the Weather Institute. There seems to be some kind of disturbance on the second floor, but I'm a professional, not easily rattled.
Disturbance? You're being held hostage by criminals. I respect your professionalism.
There's something here you can't see. The unspoken chemistry between us.
While grinding for the level cap, I evolve both Gobblegut and Wiggler, after which it's time to take on Winona and her flying types. She starts out with Swellow, so I start with Gobblegut, and I get hit by an aerial ace, after which I take it down into the red with a rock slide. Winona's then forced to waste a hyper potion. As I take it down to a similar amount of health, she goes for a double team to try and evade my rock slide, but it's not enough as a crunch takes it out. Her next Pokemon is her ace Altaria, and expecting a Dragon Breath here, I swap out into Bowser. The Dragon Breath does about a quarter of my health, and the next one the following turn takes me down to half as I go for a Rock Tomb to lower its speed and take it down below half health with a crit. Another Rock Tomb is then enough to take out the Altaria, but the next Pokemon Pelipper is super effective with a Water Pulse, so I have to swap out into Rosalina to tank it. The following turn I go for a Rock Slide, but it does a bit below half health, and I get hit by a Water Pulse, which actually ends up getting the Confusion. Since I have so much health, I decide to risk the Confusion, and I break through and get the Rock Slide, which actually takes it out, which means I must have gotten a very low roll. Finally, Winona's last Pokemon is Skarmory, but since I'm still confused, I decide to swap out into Wiggler, who gets hit by a couple of aerial aces, heals up with an Oran Berry, and can then hit back with a Lava Plume, taking out the Skarmory. This means we receive our 6th gym badge, but not only that, directly after the fight, Marshtomp evolves into a Swampert.
I'm looking forward to when we can meet again.
Okay, she's weirded me out a little bit. Once I reach Lily Cove City, we have to have another fight with May. And this could potentially be super scary, since in this game she does have a fully evolved Sceptile. And I did equip Swampert with a Rindo Berry to be able to resist this exact scenario, but for whatever reason, she never actually used a Grass-type move, so I got through the fight without any problems whatsoever.
I keep suppressing the urge to drink soda, and then I praise myself for it.
Okay, so this Team Magma Grunt is going to be my new self-improvement guru. But these soda pops are just too tasty.
But now I just want to with you. I want to engage you.
Okay, fine, Courtney, you've stolen me from Olivia. In preparation for the 7th gym battle, Gobblegut evolves into a Flygon, and it's time to take on the twins Tate and Liza and their psychic types. And since Gobblegut has Crunch and a massive attack stat, it absolutely gobbled these psychic types up, netting us the 7th gym badge. Alright, boys, let's get ready to rumble. And rumble we shall in the next big fight, and actually a pretty difficult fight versus the first Mega Evolution of the run and Maxi. The way I've decided to use Mega Evolution in this run is that any fight where the opponent uses Megas, I'm allowed to Mega Evolve as well, which means that we get to see Rosalina for the first time as a Mega. I hit the Mightyena super effectively down to about 40% as I power up myself with Power Up Punch, and my speed gets halved with Scary Face. A takedown then does minimal damage, and another Power Up Punch gets me to +2 and takes out the Mightyena. In comes Weezing, which unsurprisingly instantly explodes, taking me down to just 42 HP, which isn't great since the next Pokemon is Crobat. Not wanting to be outsped and taken out by an Acrobatics, I swap into Wiggler, who actually takes way more damage than I expected, so I swap out again into Thwomp. Graveler can resist Acrobatics for days, so all I need to do is use wait a second, I forgot to teach it a Rock-type move before the fight? Now this is probably the dumbest mistake I've ever made in a Nuzlocke video, but because of Mean Look, I can't swap out and I'm locked into only using Rock Smash and Power Up Punch, and he's definitely out-damaging me with Acrobatics, which means that unfortunately, I'm gonna lose Thwomp here to my own stupidity. I then send in Bowser, who instantly gets Mean Looked, and I go for a Rock Tomb, taking it down into the red. The following turn, I get hit by an Acrobatics, after which I set up a Sword Stance to prepare for Maxi's next Pokemon. Another Acrobatics takes me down to 50 HP, but Rock Doom seals Crobat's fate, after which he sends in his Camerupt, which Mega Evolves immediately. However, because of that +2 from Sword Stance, one Earthquake is all it's gonna take to take it out and beat Maxi. The guy then tries to ruin the world by unleashing Groudon, the ultimate ground type. And for whatever reason, Champion Steven thinks it's a good idea to send a 10-year-old to ride on this thing's back into a volcano. I'm gonna go out on a limb and hope that that guy doesn't have any children of his own. Now, as epic as it would be to add Groudon to the team, legendaries are not allowed, so we're gonna have to take it on instead. And so I figure my best order of business is going into Bowser, who's got the highest defense on the team. Being a wild Pokemon, Groudon randomly goes for Rest, which gives me a free Earthquake, taking it down below half, as Precipice Blade then takes me down to just 25 HP, after which another Earthquake is enough to take out the Groudon, which means we can get through it without any casualties and move on to Wallace, which is gonna be a very difficult fight. Wallace has a team of 5 water types, of course super effective against ground types, leading off with his Love Disc as I send in Bowser. The first thing he does is go for a Sweet Kiss to confuse Bowser, but I do have a Person Berry just in case that would happen, so I can take it out with one Earthquake so we don't have to deal with this thing anymore. Next up is Milotic, which is by far the biggest problem on his team, so I instantly swap out into Rosa as he misses a Hydro Pump. This is super important. Since he only has one water type move in Hydro Pump, it's gonna be important to stall this out. I go for a second Bulldoze, trying to bait out the third Hydro Pump, but he just goes for Recover instead. Now that he's healed up to just about full, I go for another Bulldoze, and he does connect with his third Hydro Pump. Since Rosalina is now at risk of being taken out by another Hydro Pump, I go ahead and swap out into Cheep Cheep as it hits the fourth. It ends up doing lots of damage, getting a critical hit, and so I decide that Nincada is gonna do one final solid for the team, swapping into that final Hydro Pump, taking one for the team. Now that Milotic's used all of its Hydro Pumps, I swap in Wiggler, which might seem odd, but I go ahead and set up an Amnesia as it recovers back up. I then get to +4 with a second Amnesia as a Disarming Voice does barely any damage at all. I then set up my final Amnesia as an Ice Beam actually gets a crit and does a fair bit of damage. Now, even though I'm at risk of going down to another crit, I can't really swap into anything else, so I decide to stay in and risk it. However, there is another huge problem being Recover. There's no way I'm ever gonna out-damage it. So I quickly realized that I was gonna have to stall this thing out of Recover, which I pretty much just did by spamming Lava Plume until I got a burn. Then once I noticed that the Milotic stopped going for Recover, I just started spamming Earth Power until it went down, which is how I took down Milotic with a Camerupt. Realizing I'll go down to any physical move from this Whiscash, I decide to swap out into Gobblegut, who can take out the Whiscash with a couple of Earthquakes. This means that Wallace is gonna send in his next Pokemon Celio, which I'm unsure I can take out in one hit since it's pretty bulky, so I decide to send in Cheep Cheep, who's unfortunately also gonna have to take one for the team. Before going night-night, however, I do get a crit with an Earthquake, almost taking the Celio out. My currently healthiest team member on the roster is Bowser, so I swap it in to Revenge Kill the Celio as Wallace sends out his final Pokemon Seeking. A critical hit Earthquake earns us the final gym badge, but that was certainly a tough fight. Now that we're missing quite a few team members, I decide to go to the Safari Zone where I capture myself a Donphan. I go ahead and name her Peach, not that Peach looks like an elephant or anything. That's not what I'm trying to say. And since catching Donphan blocks us off from getting Rhyhorn in the Safari Zone, we make our way up the waterfall to Victory Road. Wally then gets absolutely destroyed, which means we can move on to the Elite Four. And so after my final preparations, it's time to take on the first Elite Four member, Sydney, with his dark types. Now Sydney's a weird looking guy, like he's got one tuft of hair that kind of looks like the Sydney Opera House.
Hey, don't be dissing Sydney.
Keegan, where did you come from? I wasn't dissing the entire city of Sydney in Australia, just the guy's haircut. Anyway, Sydney starts out with Mightyena, intimidating my Sandslash, so I go for a Sword Stance to get my attack back up as he goes for Swagger, which I heal off with a Person Berry. The next turn, I go for a +3 Brick Break, instantly taking out the Mightyena as he sends in Shiftry. After getting hit by Fake Out, it outspeeds with a Leaf Blade, taking me down pretty low as Brick Break then takes it out. I then outspeed and destroy the Cacturn as he sends in Sharpedo, which could just Aqua Jet me, so I decide to swap out into Rosa. After tanking said Aqua Jet, the Sharpedo also outspeeds me the next turn, going for a Crunch, taking me down to just above half as I can take it out with an Earthquake since Sharpedo doesn't really have defenses. A Night Slash from Absol takes Rosa down low as I go for an Earthquake, which barely misses out on the KO. I then decide to swap out into Peach on the turn that Sydney's obviously going to go for a full restore. Absol doesn't even hit me down below half with a critical hit Night Slash, after which I can take it out with an Earthquake, beating Sydney. This means we move on to the second Elite Four member, Phoebe, and her Ghost types. Phoebe's got some bulky Pokemon, particularly that Dusknoir can be very difficult to deal with all the elemental punches, but I start out with Gobblegut as she sends in Dusclops. A Crunch takes it down below half as she predictably goes for a Confuse Ray, which I gave my last Person Berry to Gobblegut for. This means that I can freely take out the Dusclops with another Crunch, but she's going to send in Dusknoir, and since she's pretty hard telegraphing the Ice Punch, I decide to swap out into Wiggler. The Ice Punch doesn't do too much damage, as the next turn I can outspeed and go for a Will-O-Wisp, having the attack of the Dusknoir, which is going to make a huge difference. Even though he's got Ice Punch, I decide to swap out into Bowser as he starts going for Hex since his attack is compromised. This allows me to set up a Swords Dance since Hex is pretty reliably doing a quarter of my health. In the end, I decide to go for a second Swords Dance, risking the crit so that I can outspeed the Dusknoir and take it out with an Earthquake. The reason I did this is because all Phoebe's remaining Pokemon are slower than Bowser, so I can freely just take them all out with Earthquakes, winning me the battle. But this just means we have to take on the Elite Four member I'm the most afraid of, Glacia and her Ice types. Having a full team of Ice types staring me in the face with a team full of Ground types is a terrifying prospect. My best bet is to lead with Swampert as her Glalie goes for a Light Screen so I can go for a Power-Up Punch, raising my attack. The next turn she goes for Hail, which gives me another free Power-Up Punch, taking out the first Glalie with a critical hit. She then sends in her first Frostlass that immediately confuses me with a Confuse Ray, which I fortunately have the Lumberry to heal off. Since Frostlass's defenses are pretty bad, a +2 Stab Earthquake is enough to take it out. The second Frostlass hits me with a 100% accurate Blizzard before going down to an Earthquake too. Walrein is the entire reason I got that +2, but a Rock Slide isn't even enough to take it out, but luckily Blizzard leaves me at 19 HP so I can survive Hail. The Hail then wears off and Glacia goes for a full restore, and I decide to go for an Earthquake not to miss a Rock Slide, and since I get to move first the next turn, I can take it out as she sends in her final Glalie. Since I'm at such low HP and this thing has Ice Shard, I decide to swap out into Wiggler, who can very easily tank this thing's hits and just take it out with a couple of Lava Plumes. And I gotta say, I'm very relieved that we beat Glacia without losing a single Pokemon. But there is still good reason to be worried since we still have to face Drake, the final Elite Four member with his Dragon types. Drake leads off with Altaria as I start with Rosalina. Altaria goes for Cotton Guard, which would normally be great against my physical Swampert, but I did pick up the TM for Ice Beam just before the Elite Four, which takes it down into the red. Drake then of course heals up as I go for another Ice Beam, taking it down low and actually getting the freeze. This means Altaria is unable to move the next turn and we can freely take it out with another Ice Beam. Second up is Drake's first Flygon, which misses a Screech and gets absolutely destroyed by a quad-effective Ice Beam. His second Flygon does miss the Supersonic, which I would have healed off with my Lumberry, and I just destroy it with an Ice Beam. Next, we have to deal with Drake's ace Pokemon Salamence, which does intimidate us and hits us with a Dragon Rush, which could potentially flinch, and it does the first turn, but then it misses and gets absolutely bopped by an Ice Beam. This leaves only Kingdra, which could potentially put us to sleep with a Yawn, so I go for an Earthquake, but since we still have that Lumberry, I'm not too afraid and go for a second one as we then get put to sleep. My Lumberry then of course kicks in, and the next turn we can take out the Kingdra with a final Earthquake, finishing the Elite Four gauntlet. Having defeated the Elite Four with no casualties still only leaves us with 5 Pokemon to take on the champion Steven. He may very well be the richest looking chap in the universe and holds the title of Miss Hoenn. But today, my ground types and I will do our utmost to steal that title. It's time we face our final opponent of the run to decide the fate of our ground types. Steven, of course, leads with Skarmory, so I decide my best bet is to send out Wiggler. He sets up a layer of spikes, but since I know he's got Sturdy, I decide to go for a Will-O-Wisp just to break that, and as a bonus, it lowers his attack. Skarmory then sets up a second layer of spikes as I go for a Lava Plume, and since his Sturdy's broken, I can take it out in one shot. Next up is Aggron, and expecting a powerful Earthquake, I gave Wiggler a Shucka Berry to be able to resist it and retaliate back with a Will-O-Wisp, lowering Aggron's attack. That burn then allows me to survive another Earthquake on just 10 HP, bringing the Aggron really low with a Lava Plume, but together with the burn, it's enough to take it out. Now, as the Claydol swaps in here, I do swap out into Rosalina, and because of spikes, whenever I swap in Wiggler again, it's gonna go down, so I will have to keep that in mind. The Claydol does take me down below half with a critical hit Earth Power, after which I Mega Evolve and start hitting it with Waterfalls. And because of the power-up boost from Mega Evolving, my first Waterfall does take it down really low as it goes for a Reflect. A full Restore then heals up Claydol to full, but because of Reflect, I start using Ice Beam instead, and it does above half, so 2 Ice Beams is enough to take it out. Not wanting to get absolutely destroyed by a Giga Drain from this Cradily, I swap out into Wiggler, who's gonna have to make a noble sacrifice so that we can safely swap in our next Pokemon. I go ahead and switch in Bowser and go for a Swords Dance the next turn as the Cradily hits me with a Confuse Ray, but at this point, I'm all out of berries. I do, however, triumphantly break through the confusion, go for a Brick Break, which gets a crit and takes out the Cradily. Next is Armaldo, and I decide to try my luck with Confusion again, but it doesn't work out quite as well this time, and an X-Scissor takes me down really low. Finally, I of course hit myself in Confusion once again, going down to the next X-Scissor. I decide that my best bet is to send in Rosalina and try to take it out with a Waterfall, but just because of my minus attack nature, I barely don't take it out and go down to an X-Scissor. Talk about bad luck. I then send in Gobblegut as Steven heals up to full and get a free power-up punch, after which I follow up with another one the next turn as he hits me with an X-Scissor. A +2 Stab Earthquake from Flygon is then enough to take on the Armaldo, which means we only have to face his Mega Metagross. He Mega Evolves, but since Mega Pokemon don't get their new speed stat the first turn in Generation 6, I outspeed and manage to take him out with a +2 Stab Earthquake. And with only 2 Pokemon left on the team, that's how I beat a Pokemon Omega Ruby Hardcore Nuzlocke using only ground types. Honestly, this was one of the most fun runs I've done in a while. Got to use some of my favorite Pokemon and some really fun strategies like taking out a Milotic with a Camerupt. Of course, let me know what you guys thought in the comments below, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, what are you doing? New video coming soon, and as always, until we see each other next time, have a good one.